Hey guys, my name is Lauren if you're new to my channel. I wanted to make a video today about marathon recovery. So this is actually my fourth time trying to film this video due to various technical and weather-related difficulties. For those of you that don't know, I ran the Boston Marathon exactly 3 weeks ago. It is currently Monday, May 6th. So as I was going through this marathon recovery process, I thought it would be helpful and useful to some of you to kind of walk through what I do to recover from a marathon and how that process looks for me. And hopefully that'll be useful and interesting to some of you guys who are also trying to recover from either a marathon, an ultra marathon, or any kind of long, hard effort race. So I kind of want to start with that period of time immediately after the marathon, like the minutes and hours after, and then work my way up to kind of 2 or 3 weeks out. Right after a marathon, if you keep moving, you'll tend to feel better as the next few days go by. So after a marathon, your legs are completely burned out, all this lactic acid is built up, you feel heavy, you feel sore, you feel weak, and the first thing you want to do is just sit down. That's probably the worst thing you could do as soon as you finish a marathon. You want to keep moving for at least a little bit. For me, the best thing is usually just kind of like a nice, slow, easy walk. You want to keep those muscles moving, contracting, and flushing things out. So the Boston Marathon finish line chute is actually probably the longest one I've ever been through. You have to walk through each stage of like getting your wrap, getting your medal, getting some water, getting some food, and then you have to walk like another block or two, to get to the family meetup area and to actually get out of the finish area. And if you sit down anywhere, they'll tell you, we'd like you to keep moving, try to clear out of this area as soon as possible. Like, they don't want a big buildup of people. So they really encourage you to keep moving, which was actually pretty helpful. So right after the marathon, I was moving around a lot. We had to get to the airport, so I had to pack everything up. It was actually not that bad flying out the night of the marathon because I was walking around so much, going through security at the airport, walking through the terminal. So I would say one of the best things you can do immediately after a marathon is to keep moving as much as you can. Obviously, very low effort, very easy kind of movement. Like, just try to walk around a little bit. Don't immediately sit and then sit the rest of the day, because when you try to get out of bed the next day, your legs will be so stiff that you won't be able to bend them. So I would say the first most important thing is to try to keep moving at least for a little bit, or try to move periodically the rest of the day after the marathon. And that also pertains to kind of the next few days. But before we move on to the next day, I do want to point out, obviously, after a marathon, you're dehydrated, your muscles are depleted. You want to take in some fluids, you want to take in some electrolytes, you want to try to have a nice, wholesome, balanced meal, nice whole foods, something healthy, some protein, some vegetables and fruit, some carbs, and try to get a meal in as soon as you can. I didn't do as good of a job with this because we wanted to get to the airport to make sure we didn't miss our flight, so I ended up not eating until a few hours after I was done with the marathon, which isn't too bad, all things considered, but I ended up eating about 4 hours after the marathon, and then again about 6 hours after the marathon, and then by the time my flight got back home, I just went to bed and I was done for the day. So most important thing, immediately after the marathon, keep moving, try to walk around a little bit, make sure you hydrate, make sure you eat a big wholesome meal, as healthy as you can. If you're craving something, I would say go ahead and have it. But if you're not craving something healthy, try to make sure you're at least getting in some lean protein, vegetables, fruits, carbs, to help replenish everything that's been depleted. So day 2, the next day after the marathon, what I find helpful is, again, some really light, low effort, easy activity. So what I've done after the last few marathons and ultra marathons I've done is stationary bike. So I'm usually feeling kind of tired, kind of lethargic. I don't necessarily want to go out on the roads, but I just want to move my legs enough to kind of get the blood flowing, wake them up a little bit, shake out some of the stiffness. So I'll get on the stationary bike anywhere from 20 or 30 minutes up to an hour. Again, at a very, very easy pace. I'm really just moving my legs. I'm not putting a lot of effort in. I just want to, get the muscles to kind of shake out that stiffness, warm them up enough so that I can kind of stretch and try to get some mobility back. So the day after the marathon, this time I did about a 60-minute easy stationary bike ride, followed by some stretching and just a little bit of foam rolling. So kind of those first few days, maybe even the first week or two after the marathon, one of the most important things to do is to avoid really high impact activities. So your legs have just been beaten up pretty hard by running, a fast, hard effort on the road, and you want to give them a chance to recover. So after my first marathon, my coach said, no running at all for 2 weeks. Your legs are beat up, they haven't experienced this kind of thing before, they're broken down, and you don't want to risk injury. So you're so depleted after a marathon, if you try to jump right back into running and training, you're a lot more likely to injure yourself than if you give yourself enough time to fully recover. So that doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. You just want to avoid high impact. So some of the things that are good to do during that 1 to 2 week post-marathon recovery period, again, is biking. You could do the elliptical or rowing or something at the gym that's low impact. You could walk, you could hike, you could do yoga, you could go swimming. There's a lot of options. This is kind of a good time to build some more good habits to keep yourself strong once you start running again. So I like to use this post-marathon recovery period as an opportunity to try to build better habits. So I'll do some easy cardio like biking or elliptical, pretty low effort. I'll practice stretching every day. I'll try to incorporate some more strength training into my workouts, because that usually falls by the side during marathon training. I get kind of lazy with all the running and I don't keep up with the strength work. So I start trying to build that back into my routine post-marathon, and then hopefully once I get back to running, I can keep some of these better habits that I've kind of tried to make a habit and build back into my routine during that recovery period. So especially the day of the marathon and the following days, again, you want to make sure you're staying hydrated, taking electrolyte replacements if you need them. I usually use Nuun, which is kind of a no sugar, or just I think 1 gram of sugar kind of electrolyte placement. You just add the tablet to water. I'll sip on that for a couple days after. I'm usually craving healthy foods, so I try to eat pretty healthy, pretty wholesome foods to aid in that recovery process and come back, better and stronger. So something else that I like to do is actually get back out on the trails. So I really love trail running, but during a marathon training cycle, I'm usually not on the trails much because I'm focused on, fast efforts on the road and hitting certain paces, and that's not really something that comes easily when you're out on the trails. So the reason I like to get on the trails after a marathon is it tends to be a lot easier on your joints in the sense that it's not as hard as, concrete and pavement. Dirt, sand, whatever it is going to be a lot easier on your body once you do start running again. And it's also the varied terrain helps work all those extra little muscle groups and accessory muscles in your legs to help strengthen all of those different areas, as opposed to road running where it's very repetitive. You're always hitting the ground kind of with the same force and the same angle. Whereas trail running, with the rocks and the dirt, sticks, whatever it is, the terrain's just a lot more varied. So your legs get a little bit more work in terms of stabilizing and strengthening all those other muscles. So I like to get out on the trails once I start running back into my routine. It's best to give yourself, short runs every, 2 or 3 days once you feel like you're ready to come back into running regularly. So I would say the more novice you are in terms of running marathons, the longer recovery period you should take just to be safe and make sure you don't get injured. So maybe stick to no running for 2 weeks, although you can do other types of activities, and then start working running back into your routine by running only maybe 3 miles every other day or so, kind of whatever feels right to you. You really want to try to pay attention to how you're feeling and make sure you don't overdo it, because that's a very common way that people get injured. So this time, coming back into running, I would say 90% of my miles, 90% of my runs were trail runs. In those first 3 weeks, since it's actually 3 weeks post-marathon now, I came back a little bit faster than 2 weeks. I only took, about a week off running before I started working a little bit back in. But I started with kind of like hikes where I would jog a little bit. And then I did a trail run, and then a couple days later, another trail run. And then a couple days after that was my first run back on the roads. And I did my first track workout a little over 2 weeks post-marathon. I did a really short track workout, just 200-meter repeats, just to kind of get my legs moving again, kind of give them a little refresher. And I actually just did a trail 10K race this past weekend, so just under 3 weeks post-marathon. And I did that because, it's a race I've done before, so I knew the course. It was kind of a smaller local race, and I thought it would be a good reintroduction to kind of racing, trying to race a little bit faster, but not putting the joints under too much pressure with like a hard road effort. And I definitely didn't have the leg speed or turnover, in place for a real fast road race. So I just did a trail 10K this past weekend. I actually have another trail 10K in about 2 weeks. And then I'm doing kind of a team relay run in Reno, Tahoe area a couple weeks after that. So kind of my next few races are all going to be trail races, a little bit easier on the joints. I'm not going to have to kill myself with speed workouts and things like that. I'm just going to get out on the trails, try to do some faster days and harder efforts to kind of get myself back into a regular running and training routine. One of the last things I wanted to mention was massage. So when I was doing marathon training, I was getting a full body massage about once a month, and I was foam rolling pretty regularly, at least a few times a week, trying to stretch and, trying to keep myself healthy. So after a marathon, it might be a good idea to get a massage. Or a sweet spot, like a good window, is maybe 3 to 5 days post-marathon. So immediately after the marathon, you're so sore, a massage might not feel very good. And it might, feel a little bit better if you wait a couple days, you start to feel better, and then you get like a nice full body massage to kind of flush everything out. In the meantime, you could do some gentle stretching and foam rolling as long as you've warmed up a little bit to help aid in that recovery process. So I did not follow this advice. I didn't get a massage until about 2 weeks after the marathon, and I just, wasn't planning and booking it ahead. I jumped back into work and got busy and just didn't get around to it. And I was pretty achy even 2 weeks out, and I think getting a massage earlier would have been beneficial. So just to kind of do a little recap, I think right after the marathon, if you keep trying to move just a little bit of walking so you don't get too stiff, you try to rehydrate, obviously, as soon as you can. Take electrolytes if you need to. You'd probably want to take some right after the marathon if you have them. Try to eat healthy, wholesome food so that your body is getting the best fuel possible to recover. Try to avoid high-impact exercises for at least 1 to 2 weeks to give your body time to rest and recover. Stick to low-impact exercises like biking, elliptical, swimming, yoga, and things like that. And if you have run trails before, if you like running trails, I would recommend using those as a way to get back into running without putting too much stress and high impact back onto your joints after all the road miles you did during marathon training. So if you can, try to work some trail running into your routine as you're coming back so that it's a little bit more of a gentle reintroduction to running regularly. And make sure you take your time. Don't try to jump into running every day. Give yourself a little time, just a few miles every other day until you start working back up to it. So that was my kind of like tips and tricks or my advice on marathon recovery. So let me know if you have any questions down below. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you guys next time.